Zok the Heilige Gemara were 8 lines from the top on Daf Kuftes Vav Amud Aleph. Tanu Rabbanon. It says in the pasuk, Lo Yisavoy El Beisoy, Lavoit Avoitoi. You're not allowed to go in to the home of the loiva to seize a mashkin. So the Gemara is Vadai. Leveisoi. We are 8 lines from the top on Daf Kuftes Vav Amud Aleph. Like
It will.
Tanu Rabbanon. Lo Yisavoy El Beisoy, Lo Yisavoy El Beisoy Lavoit Avoitoi. The Malva is not allowed to go into the premises of the loiva to take a mashkin. So we're medayik. The only person whose house you're not allowed to enter if you're the Malva is the house of the loiva himself. But if there's a co-signer, you're allowed to go into the house of the co-signer and seize a mashkin from the co-signer. And the Gemara brings 2 psukim to illustrate that. It says in the pasuk, "Likach bigdoi," take his beged. In other words, you could seize his possessions. Ki arav zor, because he signed an arevus, he accepted arevus for somebody else. The Yomer, there's another pasuk that says, "B'ni, my dear son, im aravta l'rayecha," if you were an arav for your friend, takata l'zor kapecha, you shook a commitment on behalf of somebody else, or noikashta b'meficha, you did something else with your mouth that messed you up. You were tormenting somebody. You were insulting somebody. So you have to make mechila. You became captured because of things that you said, whether it was accepting a revos or whether it was hurting somebody. Asay zois, do the following to be saved. Kibasa the kafarecha, because you came into the hand of your friend. Lech hisrapes, go pay up. Hisrapes means pay up. And Rashi says, I'm sorry, not Rashi, one of the other versions say hisrapes, that's for hater, loosen up, pass your bread. In other words, give him money. Urahav reach, and ask mechila. Beg your friend for mechila from the oinah that you did to him, for hurting his feelings. The Gemara is explaining now. If you owe money because you're an Arab, open up your wallet, pay up. And if it's a question of because you hurt somebody with your words, hirba alav reim. Make sure to send people over to him to try to be mishachneim, to try to convince him to be much. That was the first shot in Lesove al Beisei Lavid Avoitoi, to tell us that you're allowed to seize the mashkin of an Arev. But L'tzat Sheni Zakhamor, we have another possibility of what we can learn from the pasuk. And that is Leveisoy, to the house of a loiva yata nichnas. But there are people that owe you money that you are allowed to seize a mashkin from. If you did a job for somebody, you were schlepping things for him, you're a porter, and he's not paying you, you can grab his money. Lischar Chamar, if you did some transportation for him. Lischar Pundik, if he stayed in your Airbnb and he didn't want to pay. Or Lischar Jinkois, or if you hired him to draw nice art on your walls. Yochel, so for all these things, if the time comes to get paid, and he doesn't pay you, you can see something from him. However, Yochel, what if you agreed, you don't have to pay me upon completion, I'm going to give you 30 days. So now that already transfers all of these chiyuvim into a regular chayiv, and therefore, Talmud Lemer Masas Mu'uma. What does the pasuk say by Masas Mu'uma? It says, Kisasha Beracha Masas Mu'uma, Loisabe al Beis Elav Avotai. Any type of reason why you might owe money, whether because you borrowed it, or because he did work for you and he gave you terms, these are all considered chayvis, regular chayvis, where the Malva may not seize anything from the loiva. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. Almana. An almana. Bein sheyaniya, it doesn't matter if she's poor. Bein sheyas shira, if she's rich. And meaning if she's rich, and even though you take her beged as a mashkin, she's fine, because she has plenty of other begodim. Ein mashkin, so it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to take a mashkin from her. Why? Because it says in the pasuk, "Shenemer le'sach boil beged almana." Taner Rabbanan, Almana, Ben Shiani, Ben Shiashira, just like our Mishnah says, Ein Mimash Kenoisa, Divir Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Aimer, it makes a difference. Ashira Mimash Kenoisa, Aniya Ein Mimash Kenoisa. So Rabbi Shimon is a major Chiddush. The Torah says a blanket Isser. You're not allowed to take any time a mashkin from the Almana. Rabbi Shimon says, the Torah didn't mean me, the Torah only meant she's poor, didn't mean she's rich. Sha'ata chayiv lahachzir law. You're mechuyev to give back the machshkin at night or the day, whatever type of beggar it was. And by you showing up, by a strange man showing up to this almana's door twice a day, it doesn't look good. It looks like men are visiting her for bad purposes. You're going to give her a bad reputation. But Nashir, that's not a problem because you don't need to return her beggar at night. She has plenty of begun. But this is a huge chiddush there. Shimon is saying the Torah says don't ever take a beggar almana, and he's coming along to say, well, the Torah only meant it's an aniyah, not an issue. It's a big chiddush. Zog to Gemara, remember Rabbi Yehuda l'darish time of the crop. Rabbi Shimon did what we call being darish time of the crop. The Torah says a mitzvah without any exceptions, and it doesn't say a reason. Rabbi Shimon on his own makes up a reason. And then, because that's the reason, he says the Torah's halacha doesn't apply by the Shira. Rabbi Yehuda obviously doesn't say that. So Zok Gemara, remember Rabbi Yehuda, loy darish time of the krah. For Rabbi Shimon darish time of the krah. So you tell me the guys be a machlokes over here. Rabbi Yehuda holds you not darish time of the krah. The pasuk says something, no exceptions. And Rabbi Shimon says no. The Torah says something. You're allowed to figure out why the Torah made that issur, and then you're allowed to change the halacha based on your understanding. We have a brisa that quotes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, and they seem to take the opposite position, where Rabbi Yehuda is darish time, and Rabbi Shimon is darish time. And where is that? By the Isser for a melech to marry more than 18 wives. The Tanya v'lo b'lo noshim. A melech shouldn't have too many wives. And the Torah says, lo yar b'lo noshim, v'lo yoser levavai, and these women shouldn't turn your heart away from HaKadosh Baruch. So the machlokes is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the Torah only means because they're bad. So therefore, Marbu, you really can have more than 18 wives. It's not a problem. As long as they're good women. So right off the bat, you see Rabbi Yehuda's darshan time in the crowd. The only reason why the Torah said he can't marry too many wives is because they're going to farfear him. But if they're good wives, then you could. That's darshan time in the crowd. Shimon Omer, no. No matter how many women there are, no matter how good they are, you're not allowed to marry more than 18 women. But even one woman, which normally would be mutter, if she's serious liba, if she's going to be a bad woman and turn his heart away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he shouldn't marry her, even one woman. But about not darshan time with the crop. In other words, we're not going to be matir more than 18 women if they're good women. The Torah says no. Zok to Gemara. Imkei matam lo v'liyarbel nashim. So why does it say v'liyarbel nashim if even one is bad? Zok to Gemara afilu kavigaya. Reb Shimon saying even if your woman is so good, she's such a good wife that she's like Abigail, even so you're not allowed to have more than 18 wives. So who is this Abigail? How do we envision a good wife? She cooks for us, she bakes for us, she takes care of us. That's not how the Gemara defines a good wife. The Gemara defines a good wife like Abigail. Abigail was the wife of Novel, and David HaMelech said, I'm going to kill Novel because Novel did something that he considered to be Merid B'Malchus. So Abigail was Novel's wife. She was a beautiful woman, and she came on a donkey to try to save her husband's life, to plead for his life. So she came, and the Gemara darshans the psukim there in Shmuel that she came with a shaila of Dam Nida. David HaMelech used to look at Dam Nida. David HaMelech told her, I can't paskin by night. So she says, oh, you can't paskin by night, but you had no problem paskining and condemning my husband to death at night. So David HaMelech said, I didn't paskin. It's Merid B'Malchus. It doesn't need a psak. So she said, what do you mean it's Merid B'Malchus? Shaul is still alive. You're not Melech yet. So you have to paskin. So David HaMelech realized that she saved him from killing somebody under a wrong pretense, that would have been Ritzifa, and she saved him from being boiled damnida, because the story was he wanted her there. So I'll call upon him. What makes a good wife? A good wife is someone who's going to challenge her husband forcefully and show him that he's making a mistake and save him from doing affairs. That's how the Gemara defines a good wife. Zok the Gemara. La'olam Rabbi Yehuda lo darish time of the crow. Really, Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah is the right Rabbi Yehuda. He's not darish time of the crow, and even a rich almana, you're not allowed to take a mashkin from her. So why over here in the case of the Melech does he allow more women than 18 if they're good women? Because V'shani Yacha the Mefarish Kra, he's not being dashin time of the Kra. The Torah himself explains the reason for why you can't have too many wives. Because the Torah says v'lo yabelei nashim v'lo yoser. And how do you read the pasuk? My time v'lo yabelei nashim. You know why the Torah says you're not allowed to have too many wives? Mishum v'lo yoser. So the Torah is saying the reason is lo yoser. If the Torah is saying the reason is lo yoser, you don't have to be dashin time of the Kra to say that if they're good women, you're allowed to have more than 18 wives. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda is making more than 18 wives if they're good women, because it's minei obey the Torah v'lo yoser. But Rabbi Shimon holds the opposite, because the problem is Rabbi Shimon says you're dashin time of the Kra. Yet in the case of the L'yabel Noshim, Rabbi Shimon says no matter what, you can't have more than 18, even if they're good women. Let's analyze this. Be alma dashin time of the Kra. In a standard case, avadia dashin time of the Kra. And that's why by almana I say only a poor almana you cannot take her mashka. But if that's the case, liftei rachmana lo yarba. The Torah should just say lo yarba. Why did the Torah have to add on v'lo yoser? Lo yoser. V'na yadana. I would have known because dashin time of the Kra. My time lo yarba mishum lo yoser. So lo yoser the cause of rachman lamli. Why did the Torah stick in this extra lam of lo yoser? It's not relevant. I would have figured it out because we're dashin time of the Kra. The Torah is telling you 18 is more than 18 is always Yosser. Lo Yosser is a separate Isser. That I feel achatu meisiras libo yareitza lo yiseh. Lo Yosser means even if you only have one wife, but this wife is not good, that's a woman not to them. The Baltic Zok Eli Mishnah. Achoyvel es harechaim. We know the pasuk says Vayachbo rechaim v'rochev. Rechaim is the lower stationary stone of the mill. V'rochev is the stone that rides on it. That's the upper stone of the mill. There are two parts that comprise a mill. So a chayvel is a rechaim. If someone takes a rechaim as a mashkin, oiver mishum loy sasa. There's an iser lav. V'chayv mishum shnei kelim, and you actually get two lavin. Shenemer lo yachvel v'rechaim v'rochav. The rechaim is a lav bazunder, and the rechav is a lav bazunder. V'loy rechaim b'vad omru. They didn't only prohibit you to take a rechaim and the rechev, the kaldavar sh'oizim moichal nefesh. Anything that's involved in the preparation of food, and we're soon going to see it even includes plowing, a plow, because a plow is used in the preparation of food because you use it to plant with. Shenemar ki nefesh u'chayvel. After it says it says ki nefesh u'chayvel to include anything that could lead to oichal nefesh. Am Rabuna, Zok Rabuna, Chavel Rechaim, like Ishtayim. Why two? One is because it says Layachvel Rechaim, Mishum Rechaim, Mishum Kinefesh U'Chayvel. When the pasuk says Kinefesh U'Chayvel, it's all. Not only is it including any other davar Shalochal Nefesh, but it's in lav that will also include Rechaim Baruchav. So now for Rechaim Baruchav, each one has two lavin, Rechaim and Kinefesh U'Chayvel. Okay, gewaltig. How about rechaim vorechev? What if you take both as a mashkin? Then like the shalish, there'll be three malchus: mishum rechaim, mishum rachav, or mishum kinevich u'chayvel. Because even though the Torah specifies rechaim vorechev, but it's still also considered in the class of items that are echal nefesh. So that's also a lot that goes back and compounds the yisurim on rechaim vorechev. That is the sheet of Rabhuna. If Yehuda Amar, no. Chavel Rechaim loy ka'achas. Berechav loy ka'achas. If a Rechaim is one, a Rechav is one. Ki nefesh u'chayvel, which is another lav that's not going back in Rechayim Baruch. That's only going on all other Dvarim Shalech Nefesh besides Rechayim Baruch. The Torah already said Rechayim Baruch, so the Torah is not putting another lav on Rechayim Baruch. In Nefesh Chayvel is not going on Rechayim Baruch. It's only referring to other items that are Shalech Nefesh that are not Rechayim Baruch. Let's turn over onto the Amud Beis. L'shar Dvarim Hudas. Zok to Gemara, this machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. Rav Huna holds the general lav at the end is compounding Yisurim even on those that were itemized early in the Mishnah. Rav Yehuda holds no. Those that were itemized in the Mishnah, they have their own lav. And everything else is included in that generalized Isser, but not the original items that have already been specified. So let's say that this machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda should be exactly the same machlokes that we find between Abaye and Rav. Lema Abaye and Rav, but Tzluki the Rav Huna of Rav Yehuda come with it. Yom Rav. The halach is, it says by a carbon Pesach, Al toichlu mimenu no. You're not allowed to eat the carbon Pesach if it's not fully cooked, it's only partially cooked. A, and B, zuvashal mavushal b'mayim. And if it's cooked, how are you supposed to eat it? Ki im tzli eish roishoy al karoi al kirbu. So, first of all, I have to make hakdom. There's only two types of cooking, either tzli or bishul. Anything that's not tzli, that's not directly on the fire, on the grill, is considered bishul, whether it's fried. Anything that has any type of liquid involved, we refer to as bishul. So kiyim tzliyesh, so no umavushal really include everything. Kiyim tzliyesh is definitely not adding any other type of preparation to the Isser. It's just saying that you need to do kliyesh. So let's see what the machlokes is. Yom Rav, achal no, if you ate the carbon pesach not fully cooked, loikeshtain, you'll get two malchus. Mishum no, mishum kim tzliyesh. So you see, Rav is holding like Rav Huna, that kim tzliyesh, even though we have a specific law for no, kim tzliyesh, the general Isser, is compounding and adding an Isser to those items listed earlier in the pasuk. Okay, how about if it's mavushal? Also like a shtayim, mishum mavushal and mishum kiyum tzliyesh. What if it was not and mavushal? So I guess it was partially cooked. Then like a shalosh, mishum no, mishum mavushal and mishum loisach lenu kiyum tzliyesh. So you see, Rav holds clearly similar to Rav Huna that the general lav at the end also applies to all of the lavin that were itemized in detail earlier in the pasuk. Abaye Amar Lo, and like in a lavin shabaklos. You don't get malchus for lavin shabaklos, as Rashi says. You don't get malchus for loisoich lenu kiyum tzliyesh. Why? The chayil no mavushal, it includes both no and mavushal. It's a general lav. The ein like in ella al no mavushal shema furoshim. And losoich l'miminah is mafurish. There it is malchus for. Teichel mavushal mafurish yom malchus. But kiyum tzliyesh is a general lav. There's no malchus for it. So the Gemara wants to suggest Lema Abaye, who holds the general Isser does not compound a lav on those already itemized, is Amak Rabbi Yehuda. For Rava, who says Kim Shleish does compound lavin even on those previously itemized, the Amak Rabbi Yehuda. Amalek Rava, not a raya. I'm not Darman Afiluk Rabbi Yehuda. Even though by Rechaim Baruchim, I hold you get a lav for Rechaim, a lav for Rochim, and another lav, Ki Nefesh Uchayvel, here by Carbon Pesach, I would agree to Rabbi Yehuda that it's not an extra lav. But why is that? Because Atkan will cover Rabbi Yehuda also in Ella, the Chi Nefesh Uchayvel, Loi Mashma Rechaim Baruchim. Ki Nefesh Uchayvel is not referring to Rechaim Baruchim, because it already says Rechaim Baruchim, and the whole purpose of Ki Nefesh Uchayvel is to tell us that there are other items that are also usher, that are not Rechaim Baruchim. So therefore, Hilchach l'shar dvar mudas. The only reason why it says Ki Nefesh Uchayvel is because we need to be marba more things that are included in the Isser. It's not to add another Isser to Rechaim and Rechev, because normally you don't say lav or lo b'shnei lav. Normally, you use the pasuk to teach us a new answer. So the pashtus is that kinefesh v'chayvel is not going back in Rechayim v'rochim. Rather, it's telling us that anything else that's not in those two itemized items, but it's also oichel nefesh, is also to take as a mashkin. Hilchach l'shayt var mudasa. Aval when we're talking about Karban Pesach, kiyim tzliyesh l'mayasa. Memela kinefesh v'chayvel. There's so many other things that are oichel nefesh besides Rechayim v'rochim. You need it to be marble all of the other things. But kiyim tzliyesh l'mayasa. It's not adding anything. There's only two isurim. No. And mevushal. There's no other thing. So kiyim tzliyesh al karcha is going back on the previous two because it can't be referring to anything else. Shema min alav. That's why Zokt Rava, I would agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the case of kinefesh u'chayvel, but by Karban Pesach it's very different because there is nothing to learn out of kiyim tzliyesh. So since there's nothing to learn out of kiyim tzliyesh, it has to be another lav that compounds on top of the al toichlum and al toichlum men mevashal alushal. What about Abaye, who said that you only get one lav, no or mavushal, but you don't get a lav for kiyim tzliyesh? Even Rab Huna, who holds that you do say that the general lav at the end compounds and adds multiple isurim to the earlier, he would agree to me here. Because at Khan, like Omer Rab Huna Hassam, the only reason why Rab Huna said that by kinefesh u'chayvel it's an extra lav going back in the previous two is the kinefesh u'chayvel you say. We did all agree that kinefesh u'chayvel is extra, and since it's extra, that's why we were able to learn out of it other items of oichel nefesh. We were only able to do that because it was extra. But now that it's telling you all things of oichel nefesh are also to take as a mashkin, yes, it will include Rechayim v'Rachim as well. And therefore, there's an extra lav from kinefesh u'chayvel. Kivan the Yiseruhu, Shajar Rechayim v'Rachim, since it's extra, to tell us a general isser on all oichel nefesh, so that should apply equally to Rechayim v'Rachim. Avalacha by kiyim tzliyesh, it's not extra. It's not extra, like what you're saying, and therefore it has to be an extra lav. It's not extra at all. Lav Yiseruhu. We actually have a very important lesson to be learned from kiyim tzliyesh. And that is to tell you the Mevaydel Chedetanya. There's an easier to eat it no. There's an easier to eat it mavushal. What if Erev Pesach in the afternoon I ate it no or mavushal? Would I be over the lav? Dr. Bryson, you would not be over the lav. During the period of time where there's a mitzvah on you to eat a roasted, which is Pesach by night. Pesach by night, if you ate it, mavushal or no, that will be allowed. Yes, no, that will be an issue of eating a raw or mavushal. But the shash ain't ever called machal tzli. But in the afternoon, Erev Pesach, where there's no mitzvah yet to eat it, there, if you ate it nar mavushal, you will not be over this law. Beautiful. Tanya kavasei de Rabbi. We're going to bring a brisa that's going to prove Rabbi Yehuda's point, and that is that if you take as a mashkin Rechayim v'Rochev, you only get the law for Rechayim v'Rochev, not the general law of kinefesh u'chayvel. And how do you see it? From the following two brises. Chaval zug shel sapar. A scissor that barbers use is somewhat similar to the millstone because it's made out of two separate parts that together do the cutting. The two parts of the scissors can disengage. But if you put them together, the halacha is or tzemet shel paras, which means a pair of oxen, which Rashi does in both states, referring to the yoke, referring to the keli, that also is multiple pieces. So since there's two pieces to these two types of kelim, similar to the Chav v'Rochav, Chai v'Shtayim, there'll be two malchus. What about zebat v'zebatmai? You took one half of a scissor, then ein chai v'lachas. The Tan Yidich, and we have another brayta that says, and the Rashi takes up a Tan Yidich, because Tan Yidich is mashma that's a separate brayta from another brayta, when in fact we need both these braytas to be able to have that right. Now, from the first brayta, it doesn't prove anything that it's ein chai v'lachas, and you're not chai for kinefesh u'chayvel. because a tzemet of paros and the zug shel saparim, that's not a rechaim varach, even though it has similar characteristics. It's not. So of course you're not getting the malchus for rechaim varach. You're only getting the malchus for kinefesh uchayva. But the next brisa compounded tells us chaval zug shel saparim v'temet shel paros, the same case. Yochel, you would have thought lo yehei chayiv alachash. You're only chayiv one. Talmud loyma lo yakvo rechaim v'rachev. We're going to learn from rechaim v'rachev that kelim that break in two, that are two components, are two separate kelim. Ma rechaim v'rachev shem yuchad mishnei kelim v'oizdin melacha achas. There are two kelim that work together to complete one task. V'chayiv al zeh b'fnei atma v'al zeh b'fnei atma. Each half you're chayiv for, which is two. It doesn't say you're chayiv a third one for kinefesh uchayda. So this brisa right here is what Rashi is the raya for Yehuda, because when it talks about the rechaim v'rachav, it talks about two lav and it mentions nothing about kinefesh uchayda. Af kol dvarim shein shnei kelim. So too our scissors and our temet shel paros, since they're shnei kelim u'michadim v'otzim v'locha achas, similar to the rechaim v'rachav, you say chayiv al zeh b'fnei atma v'al zeh b'fnei atma. Beautiful. So that's the right. So Rashi points out, what do I need the first brisa for? The second brisa is where I see everything from. So Rashi says the reason why you needed the first brisa, I thought Rashi says, you could learn this from the Sefer. So Rashi, from the second brisa alone, you wouldn't necessarily know. Why? Because it says chayiv al zeh b'atzma v'al zeh b'atzma. I would have thought the whole chiddush is that you don't look at the action done, and therefore you look at them as one. Rather, you look at each item individually. But maybe there is three malchus. But since the first brisa tells us that you're chayiv two, we know you're only chayiv two. Because you'd have thought the brisa maybe holds you chayiv three, the second brisa. But it's focusing on the two because it's trying to tell you that you look at each component, you don't look at the whole tool completed. But the first brisa says, the first only chayiv two, you're not chayiv a third, so you clearly see that we hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that kinefesh uchayvel is not a separate isser to be compounded on top of the loy sachwa rechayiv. Beautiful. Now we're going to have a story till the end of the parak. Zok to Gemara. Ahu gavra the chaval sakina the ashkafta mechavrei. Someone owed somebody money, and the malva went to the loiva and seized a meat hack, something that you hack meat with, and he wanted to take that as a mashkin. Also, lakamei da Abaye, so they came to Abaye to ask if that's mashkin is valid. Only Abaye said that's not a valid mashkin. Zilla hadre, give back to mashkin. The havalei kalisha oisim boichel nefesh. A meat hack is something that's used in the preparation of food. You're not allowed to take that as a mashkin. It's not legit. And then the saw kum bedina, and then you can take it in there. He owes you money, but you don't have a mashkin. Rav Amar lo tzarich lemekem bedina. It is a valid mashkin. You don't have to take it to the entire. V'yochel litan atke medemein. You could money from him, and you'll get paid for the value of this meat hacker. Frank the Gemara, Abaye les leah he svara. Doesn't Abaye agree to the svara that we're about to quote? Ma'ishno mehana easy. What is the difference between this case and the case of a flock of goats, the ochli chushla b'nardo, that went and ate the barley in someone's farm? Now the nizik, whose barley was eaten, needed to make sure that he'll be able to collect. The owner of the chushla that was damaged because they were eaten by these goats seized the goats, and now he wants to hold the goats as a mashkin. The katan tuva, he was asking for way more money than what the value of the goats were. Avudu Shmuel paskin that it's a good mashkin, and he could demand payment up until the value of the goats, not more. So doesn't Abaye agree to that? So if he holds on to the knife, the same thing, up until the value. Now, we're going to see in a minute how it worked. What was the mechanism with which Abu the Shmuel allowed him to collect? Zok Gemara, what are you talking about? Fatam lav midi the avda leishule ulugureu. There's a migu. Why is there a migu? Because if I'm holding these izim, I could have said they're mine. I could have said the kucham biyadi. So I have a beautiful namanis. The fact that I'm saying I'm agreeing that they belong to you and I just want to hold it as a mashkin should be a good raya. I should be able to collect from it. Why? Because I could have said they're mine, and you wouldn't have been able to contradict me. Because there's a rule: if there's an item that I seize that no one ever lends out or rents out, so the only explanation why I'm holding it is because it's mine. I'm a muhsin. But what if I see something that people normally lend to each other? There, I'm not a muhsik from the fact that I seized it. Because who said that the fact that I seized it proved that it's mine? Maybe I was just renting it or borrowing it. So there, the muhsik doesn't help. So therefore, Abaye said, "Hatam lav midi da avda las lagure." Nobody rents or lends out their goats. Who? And therefore, when the person seized it, that was going to be a good hischayvus. But hacha midi da avid l'shuli l'guru. Here, the reason why Abaye said he has to give it back, nothing to do with it. It's because your muhsik on it is not even a good muhsik. Because it's something that people normally lend out. You can't have a migu that I could have said it was mine. The Sholach of Huna Bar Avin said, "Devar Masurin Lahashul Lahasker, Biyamar Lakuchen and Biyadi, Eino Nemam." It's not a good muhsik. Frankly, more of a Rava Leslie Haisvara. Rava should agree to this as well. So why does Rava hold that the fact that he's holding the butcher knife is a raya and he can collect with it? It's something that you normally lend out. And Rava also agrees that something that you normally lend out, seizing it doesn't help. But Rava Apik Zuga Desarbala, the Safar Dagat Tamiyasmit. A loiva died, and he left over in his property. I'm sorry, a malva died, and he left over in his property a Zuga Desarbala, which is a shear to shear wool. The Safar Dagat are certain books of Agadata, and Rava took him away from the assignment. Why did he take away from the assignment? Obviously, because he didn't hold that the Yisayim were a muhsik in that. You know why he held the Yisayim weren't a muhsik in it? Because it was b'dvarim asim lashul alasker. These things are normally lent out. So the fact that it was in the estate by the Yisayim when the father died doesn't prove that it belonged to the father at all. Because the father himself wouldn't have been able to say that they're mine. Because holding on to them doesn't mean anything. They could be borrowed. So Oibazoi, over here, how could Rava say that when he chapped the meat cleaver, it should be a good mashkin? Amalach Rava, Hainami, Kiva the Mifkiba, Kapti Inshiva Mushli. I disagree with the whole premise that a butcher knife is something that people lend out. A butcher knife has to be kept with a sharp blade in good condition. I'm not going to lend it out to anybody who's going to hack with it and mess up the blade. So therefore, it's something that actually people don't lend out. So therefore, the fact that this person seized it, he has a muhsik in it, and therefore we say that he can keep it, and he can run from it. Baruch Hashem, B'li Neder, Baruch Hashem, we were zeicha to finish the 9th parak above Metzia, and B'li Neder Hadon Elach HaMakabel, B'li Neder Hadon Elach HaMakabel, B'li Neder Hadon Elach HaMakabel. Even though we finished the next Amud, we're going to go back tomorrow to Chazer it, and there's a lot of stuff that we still have to flush out from the blot that we learned. There's some big toys in here that I'll mention tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have time. I'll be able to go into that a little deeper. So we'll start off tomorrow by learning Amud Beis, and then we'll go back to uncover some of the important Nukudis that were in today's blot as well as the Amud. Good Tavach, a gebench Tavach, a mazel tov.
Yeah, it was. It was.